culture is in crisis and people are suffering. People have been locked down for over a year, and they don't even know what the point of their jobs even are anymore. As a result, the subreddit r/antiwork has sprung up and really grown significantly over the past few months. A lot of people share their stories about their bosses, so I thought that I'd talk a little bit about a story from my employment history. A couple of years ago I had to work for a company where I had to commute around about 2.5 hours a day, so 1.25 hours there and 1.25 hours back. Now, the work that I was doing there mostly consisted in working with web forms and working with tech stuff because that's what I'm qualified in. It was an internship for that kind of work. The pay was pretty good for what it was, and working there wasn't exactly physically exerting, but there was a very serious problem. I didn't really see the point of the work, and the commute really stressed me out and made it very difficult to talk to my friends. The intense stress of the job, which I saw as largely pointless, and the distance that I had from the kind of life that I wanted to be living actually led to me getting quite ill. One example of the symptoms that I kept getting while I was working for this company is that I kept on excreting quite a significant amount of blood whenever I'd go to the toilet. Eventually, understandably from the company's perspective, I was let go because of this illness. They couldn't, of course, afford to pay me if I wasn't there all the time because I was very, very ill. This brings me to a lot of the literature that they have on r/anti-work. Now, for the sake of Christian charity, I'm not going to hold back in what I think on this, because I think that this ultimately hijacks a significant problem with the society and directs it in a horrible direction. Now, while I thought that the authors often had grievances that were legitimate, I thought their solutions and some of the things they said were absolutely insane. To be honest, I think if I could sum up the writings that I read, it would be like poo on a window, right? So you have the poo that conceals the sun, but you sometimes see these little specks of light shine in between the bits where the poo doesn't cover, but still the poo covers the window. For example, this Bob Black guy, one of the writers, he seems to think that there's something unjust about spending your time to survive. Like, Black never seems to acknowledge that there's such a thing as justice and that there needs to be restitution in that justice. I suppose that's what you get when you subscribe to an ideology that is crazy enough to deny the natural link between man and his means of production. But I'm not actually going to sit here and critique communism. I think that there's a far more dangerous assumption that is made by many of these thinkers. And in what little I read, this seems to be something that is very, very prevalent. And that is the idea that we can somehow replace work with just some sort of fun-founded society. I know most of you don't actually believe this, but I really want you to see exactly who you're associating with when you go onto that subreddit. Now, I may have been a bit dismissive there, but I think that if we start to look at some of the writings on this play, on this ludic structure of society, that we might actually begin to see why it's so crazy. I think a good start might be The 7 Theses on Play by Paul Z. Simons. Let's start with Simon's first thesis. Play is desire realized. It is the negation of domination. Play is unmediated activity that does not attempt to produce a specific emotion, indeed any emotion at all. Now, I think Simons refutes himself in his own document, because he talks about a communard who is threatening to kill a capitalist. He relates the story as follows. Recall the story of the young rebel who confronted a suspect bourgeois on the street. The nervous capitalist protested that he had never had anything to do with politics, to which the communard replied, "That's precisely why I'm going to kill you." Though the story ends here in historical accounts, it's not hard to imagine the young rebel flashing a fiendish grin at the shaken bourgeois, and then walking off to take his place on the barricades. Now, if this is revolutionary play, it contradicts his first thesis, because he says that there's a negation of domination here, when really what the communard is doing is dominating the capitalist. It is the condition of fallen man to have, as one of his prime temptations, the lust to dominate, the libido dominandi, and this is a prime expression right here. Also, does Simon seriously expect us to believe that there wasn't a rushing of emotions in the midst of this? Isn't that precisely what makes this story so powerful? Can you think of a single conscious action that you've ever committed that doesn't have some emotional component, either before you did the act or afterwards? Like, when I eat a sandwich and I'm hungry, I'm happy that I'm now filled. You know, that's an emotion. Right? When I'm maybe having a fight, I feel the anger flush through me. There is no action, certainly not play, that doesn't in some way involve emotion. Another annoying thing, And Simons isn't alone in this. There's this assumption that pre-agricultural societies were just filled with fun, which has absolutely no evidence for it whatsoever. It's just stated as if it's a religious tenet, probably inherited from Marx or from Rousseau. Like, you anarchists, if there are any of you watching, just read Against Rousseau by Joseph de Maistre. You need your ideas challenged. Turning back to the Bob Black that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, he states the following tripe in his work, The Abolition of Work. The secret of turning work into play, as Charles Fourier demonstrated, is to arrange useful activities to take advantage of whatever it is that various people at various times in fact enjoy doing. He also goes on to state that a lot of work could just be replaced by people deciding that they want to do it at some particular moment. The problem with these ideas is twofold. The first one is that in some necessary work, like managing nuclear power stations, or hunting even, or even in things like stonemasonry, it takes thousands of hours to develop any kind of serious competence in it, at least to the point where you would be trusted with it. So, if we only did this work when it was fun, if we did, as Bob Black suggests, only spend a few hours as long as it's fun on a certain job, you'd never have anybody with the competence to really make these things. The second thing is, I think this implicitly assumes that all work was created equal. Now, I think that, at least for the sorts of people who find themselves in revolutionary circles, the idea of being a poet is much more appealing than being a garbage collector. But the fact of the matter is that we need more garbage collectors than we do poets. Now, because value isn't actually subjective, there's the aesthetic sense where we perceive beauty, and there is the objective beauty itself in the thing. It follows necessarily that there are going to be some jobs that are objectively more appealing than others. Poo and poetry are objective things in the world that we can look at, and we can see the value in them. Being morbidly obese is actually ugly. If it were just a matter of society shaming it, there wouldn't be an internal displeasure in the person who was morbidly obese despite that. They know there is something disordered in their nature, and they pretend that the society is the one oppressing them, when really it's a lack of objective beauty. Just like some people are naturally born ugly, there are certain kinds of work that are naturally ugly, and therefore it's less likely that somebody is going to enjoy them, and certainly not to the extent that they are needed. This brings me to another bourgeois assumption that you see in many of the writers. Like, it seems as if a lot of the writers that they've presented on this forum are people who are seemingly unaware of how the Western lifestyle is able to be sustained to the point where we can seriously countenance the idea that we could simply just exist in the state of play. The fact of the matter is that the sort of Western lifestyle that enables somebody to even countenance the idea of just living for the sake of fun, this Western lifestyle, this disconnect from reality, is ultimately founded on the backs of deliberately proletarianized nations which manufactured to allow this. These would be countries like Vietnam and China. I get the distinct impression that so many of these people involved in anti-work are part of what I like to call the big white we. So what is the big white we? The big white we is the progressivism that you see at the moment dominating the world. This rank insanity, which largely poisons the mind of Western white people, also spreads out to the rest of the world and performs an ideological colonialism. This is how you can have some bourgeois Pakistani woman at the University of Lahore whining about the hijab, while 100 miles down the road there's a woman getting revenge raped. These Pakistani women are so astroturfed by a foreign, alien and false ideology that they don't even know the problems in their own country properly, and they misinterpret its culture. For example, you might have a woman from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia who might go to a Western university and find, oh, how the men and women are separated and the women do the cooking in Saudi society. It's oppressive. It's showing that the woman is inferior. And she completely forgets that the whole reason behind this is so that women get their space and men get their space and they can have proper social relations. You also may unknowingly, like many of these Western progressives, bring back the same reprobate, laissez-faire attitude towards sexuality that has been calculated to destroy civilizations throughout history. If you want some reading on this, check the description. At least the European colonial powers, when they took Africa, ostensibly wanted to civilize these people. This modern ideological progressive colonialism, this big white we, all it will do is lead people contrary to nature to death as a society. And not only is it imposing its views on the third world, not only is it disconnected from reality, it doesn't even understand how pleasure works. The passions, the fun, the pleasure that we feel is an appetite, and those appetites can be put into habits. Habits harden over time. People need to choose either different things, or they need to be more intense in what they do to achieve that level of fun. Consequently, the regime of fun would only lead to decadence. It would only lead to a constant pursuit of the next high, be it in a different way or in a more intense way. There's a reason why Ted Bundy blamed pornography for his murders. And it wasn't just to take the blame off of himself. If you want to know why, watch the other videos on my channel. The regime of fun would only lead to violence, to sexual disorder, and to the ultimate collapse of society. It does not work. And so, if you're anti-work, dissociate from these people and come up with something better. But Elliot, what is your solution to this problem that we're having? My solution is personal, and to find the work that develops your virtues the best. Not necessarily what you would want to do most, but that which makes you a objectively better human being. And that's all I can say. The sort of revolution that we would need economically to somehow obtain some good job paradigm is so revolutionary that I can't countenance it because I'm not somebody who really knows much about economics. But I do know this, that you yourself have the power to pursue those things which make you better, and you should do with every single fibre of your being. And that's what this channel is there for. I try to locate the good in different places, articulate it, and explain it. So, while I can't provide a full solution to the misery of work, believe me, if I could, I would, I can certainly try and help. And so, if you want to keep watching this channel, please click the recommended video that's about to come up. Please subscribe and do all of the stuff that the YouTubers tell you to do. And with that said, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.